Hi guys, I have put off recording this video as long as I could, given that I have been fighting off a cold and 2 days of total laryngitis. Today's story is a good one though, so I hope you'll hang in there and join me. Let's get into it. Adrian Solomon ran her manicured hands over her little black dress. She tucked her clutch bag under her left arm. She was surprised that she was nervous. She didn't generally have to think about making a good first impression. Smiling came naturally to the effervescent Adrian. But this was different. After 2 years of dating, she was finally getting to meet her fiance's father. Ernie was clearly proud of his dad. He spoke of him often and actively sought his approval. So this first meeting was especially profound. Ernie introduced his dad, Ernie Scherer III. Adrian smiled and extended her hand. It hung there. Her eyes shifted to Ernie the fiance, who repeated the introductions. The 5 words finally spoken by her future father-in-law stung more than a sharp backhand to the cheek. I know who you are. Adrian was stunned. She had no idea what her face was doing, but she had the wherewithal to retract her hand and clutch her little bag with both. She glanced at her fiancé Ernie, who appeared unfazed. He walked off with his dad. Her hand rose up and absent-mindedly touched her cheek. It was hot, almost as if she had actually been struck. For the first time in 2 years, she questioned whether this union was actually going to work. It didn't. A short time later, the differences between Adrian Solomon and Ernie Scherer III became magnified and ultimately insurmountable. She wrestled with her decision, but finally broke up with Ernie and resumed her life in North Carolina. It had started so hopefully. When Adrian and Ernie first met at a casino in Las Vegas, there was instant chemistry. They were attractive strangers at a craps table, and Ernie offered to explain the game to her. She took a quick visual inventory. He wore no wedding ring. They dove into the relationship without a net. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, after all. They seemed to have a lot in common, from their close family ties to their love of travel, and then there were their unconventional careers. While Adrian worked in sales and traveled extensively for her job in 2006, her previous occupation was not one the IRS generally sees on a tax form. 10 years earlier, Adrian was the glamorous girl on the flying trapeze. She performed and taught high wire. It was this love of adventure and excitement that had fueled her relationship with Ernie. He had been raised in a traditional home by Ernie Scherer Jr., an accountant turned real estate investor, and Charlene Abendroth, also an accountant. He and his sister, Kaitlyn Scherer III, had been brought up with educational family trips and lavish adventures. But Mom Charlene was strict. They had to earn solid grades in school, and they were expected to achieve their, quote, best potential, according to Kaitlyn. So it was a bit of an unwelcome shock when son Ernie announced that he did not wish to utilize his BYU education in economics, but intended instead to become a professional poker player. His father was a skilled player himself, so with some reservation, he gave Ernie his blessing. However, Charlene was completely against the idea, and the career switch caused a huge rift in her relationship with her only son. Sadly, they would never get the chance to work it out. On March 7, 2008, following a dinner at the country club, Ernie and Charlene Scherer were murdered in their home on Castlewood Drive. Kaitlyn had been unable to reach her parents to finalize plans for an upcoming family vacation to Hawaii. After several days, she contacted the Castlewood condo office to conduct a wellness check. It was a full week after they were last seen that their bodies were discovered by a Castlewood employee. The affluent couple were found in their pajamas, lying in pools of blood. They had been stabbed, slashed, and bludgeoned. According to Pleasanton Police Chief David Spiller, quote, "It was a shocking incident. Members of this community were really rattled. And so were investigators who immediately set out to solve the brutal double homicide." A cursory look at the crime scene revealed several critical clues. There was no sign of a break-in, indicating the Scherers may have known their killer. Ernie's pants lay on the bedroom floor, his pockets stuffed with $9,000 cash, winnings from a casino visit the previous day. Nothing in the pricey home appeared to be missing, aside from a collectible sword that was part of a set normally concealed in a closet. The motive was not burglary. The Scherers' home was one of $170 million properties overlooking the Castlewood golf course. Ernie had earned a reputation for being ruthless in business. He was a braggart known to show off wads of cash, leading detectives to conclude he may have been killed out of jealousy. But again, who would leave all that visible cash behind? Prior to moving to Castlewood, Ernest had ruffled feathers on a regular basis as a member of the San Ramon Valley Unified School Board. Investigators located boxes of documentation Ernest had planned to use against the school board at an upcoming June meeting. He had accused board trustees of improprieties in the past and deliberately voted against the other members in meetings. He became enraged when he was kicked off the board, and he vowed to get even. It wasn't a stretch to conclude that a disgruntled board member had killed the Scherers to silence him. Charlene, on the other hand, was an admired and respected member of the community. Nicknamed Sherry, Mrs. Scherer was a true academic, a lecturer in accounting, and an involved member of her church. She enjoyed birdwatching and hiking with her husband. Catherine describes her mother as, quote, a strict Mormon who didn't approve of the poker or the drinking. But somewhere along the line, she softened her stance. When her husband hosted poker games in their home, she left for the evening. Catherine explained that her brother Ernie, called Skip to differentiate him from the elder Scherer men, was senior to her by 4 years. She had to work hard in school to make good grades, but things had always come easily to her charming big brother. She leaned on him to get her through the trauma and grief surrounding her parents' murders. When Adrian learned of the shocking deaths, she reached out to Ernie to offer her support, and when investigators contacted her for an interview, she was more than happy to help with the investigation. She answered the usual questions regarding how they met, explaining that Ernie was a professional poker player of some renown. He was comped for drinks, meals, and hotel rooms, treated like a high roller everywhere they went. He had even been featured as a professional gambler on the televised World Series of Poker. Their relationship just didn't work out. Investigators scribbled in their notebooks before finally asking the one question Adrian would never forget. So how long did this affair last? There was that sting to the cheek again. Affair? There was no affair, she assured them. She and Ernie had been in a committed relationship for 2 years. So you didn't know that he's married with a 4-year-old son? Nope, she definitely did not know that. She was stunned to learn it had all been a lie. Now his dad's rudeness at their meeting made total sense. He knew her as the mistress. Ernie was a professional gambler, yes. He had won some money in tournaments over the years. But he wasn't rich. He was in serious debt. Adrian learned that Ernie and his wife Robin were in debt to his parents to the tune of $600,000. While he'd had some early good fortune, he had been on a losing streak for months. His unreliable occupation meant no bank was willing to extend Ernie the funds to purchase his California dream home. So, as he had done on many previous occasions, he turned to his dad for help. The monthly payment on a 5-year loan to Ernie and Charlene, who of course was totally against the idea, was $3,850. But this was 2008, and the economy was crumbling. Ernest demanded his money back. Ernie had always managed to make his regular payments on time, that is until March 2008, the month of the murders. When investigators questioned Ernie regarding the deaths of his parents, they were instantly suspicious. He seemed detached, relaxed even, as he answered their questions. It didn't help his cause that just 2 days after the homicides, Ernie insisted on seeing the will. It stated that he was to inherit more than $2 million from the estate on his 30th birthday, which was just a few months away. His alibi was flimsy. He said he was exhausted after playing poker in Las Vegas, drove to his Brea, California home, and was in bed alone by 6 p.m. Robin and their son, named what else, Ernest Scherer IV, were in Sacramento visiting her family. He assured them they could track his movements with credit card receipts and cell phone records. However, the detectives identified a 17-hour time gap where he could have killed his parents. Their home was 400 miles away. The funeral was held on March 22nd, and investigators had eliminated a host of suspects. The one person they could not eliminate was Ernie Skip Scherer. After viewing hours of CCTV footage, police spotted images of a red and black convertible, looking much like Ernie's red Camaro, entering the Castlewood Country Club around 8:30 p.m. on the night of the murders. It left the gated community 4 hours later. Although the grainy images didn't give them a license plate number, this was a solid piece of circumstantial evidence. Other crucial evidence pointed to the Scherer's son. Located at the crime scene was a set of distinct shoe prints in blood. They were pristine and unsmeared, indicating they were made deliberately. They were ultimately identified to be a size 12 Nike sneaker. Ernie told investigators he wore a size 10. One detail that troubled the detectives was a bloody trail leading to a closet containing a collection of decorative swords. Ernie let it slip that one of the swords was missing. While forensics on the remaining swords ruled them out as being used in the homicides, the missing one could certainly have been the murder weapon. It was never found. The investigation revealed that Ernie was a player both in and out of the casino. 3 months after the murders, he embarked on a weeks-long vacation away from his wife and son. Lonely Ernie placed a dating ad on Craigslist in multiple U.S. cities. He boldly shared 2 photos and described himself as a 6-foot-tall non-smoker seeking a non-smoking, college-educated, Harvard, Yale, Princeton woman between the ages of 25 and 40. Investigators interviewed several of the women Ernie dated during his getaway. One woman confessed to being a one-night stand. She found Ernie to be a handsome, engaging companion. He had explained that he was an author writing about the unsolved murder of his parents. When he began to secure the door and windows with bungee cords, the tipsy woman became curious but not alarmed. Ernie cut a sheet into long rope-like strips and casually noted that he might have to, quote, escape out the window. His date found him quirky but delightful. She spent the night and was shocked when she later saw that he was wanted by police for the murder of his parents. Ernie had that effect on nearly all the women he came into contact with. Eventually, though, it was Robin, his devoted wife of 9 years, who finally knocked him off his game. When he phoned her from the road, she was ready. She told him that the police had shown her video of his Camaro leaving Castlewood on the night of the murders. He was uncharacteristically silent. When she lied and told him that the driver looked exactly like him, he hung up the phone and no doubt went in search of fresh, tidy whities. The final nail in his coffin was a last-minute find by prosecutor Mike Nito. He re-reviewed crime scene photos and discovered the image of a small scrap of paper with blood on it. It was the warranty card for a Nike baseball bat. He immediately contacted his investigator, convinced that they now had a lock on the murder weapon. Prior to this discovery, police weren't sure what type of instrument had been used to bludgeon the Scherers. A review of Ernie's credit card receipts led to a Nike outlet store in Primm, Nevada. The store pulled a cash receipt dated the day of the murders. It listed cash purchases of a Nike youth baseball bat, a pair of soccer goalie gloves, and size 12 Nike Impacts Tomahawk shoes. Police were convinced Ernie purchased these items and used all 3 to murder his parents. The jury was convinced as well. On March 28, 2011, Ernest Scherer III was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and the special circumstances of multiple murder and murder for financial gain. Some 10 years after he began his prison term, Ernie can look back on the wreckage he caused. His wife divorced him. I have no information on his son, Ernie IV. His sister Kaitlyn and Adrian Solomon were rocked by his double life and betrayal and had their trust in human beings shattered. In an interview with Pleasanton Weekly, Kaitlyn stated, quote, I think everyone is entitled to make their own choices, and my brother made his, but in no way does that reflect badly on my parents. As for Skip, he remains incarcerated at the High Desert State Prison in Susanville, Nevada, 90 minutes from Reno. So that's it for today. I appreciate your bearing with my frog voice. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. YouTube has finally given my new channel a little push, and I'm doing my best to keep it growing. Until next time, be well. Scary Clary out.